Roblox Games. Some are good, some are bad, and some are grow a garden, aka really bad. In today's video, I'll be going over the biggest falloffs in recent Roblox game history, as well as the reasoning behind some of these falloffs. Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe, since only about 20% of the people watching right now are actually subscribed. And check me out on Twitch, where I will be live directly after uploading this video. I don't feel like yelling it, my throat hurts. Starting off with number 1, Runeslayer. I'm sure most of you watching this have played or at least very heard of Runeslayer. Now, Runeslayer was given what is known as the Deep Woken Killer's Curse, where whenever a game is called the Deep Woken Killer, the devs shit their pants and stop being coherent and stop updating the game. It's quite common. Anyway, Runeslayer was originally extremely popular, peaking with over 35,000 active players and having hundreds of videos made on it in the short time where it held this popularity. Over time, the game would lose its popularity for a variety of reasons. A lot of people initially didn't like its older Roblox aesthetic, where most of the maps and monsters were just made with Roblox unions because it looked old and dated. Others didn't like the combat because it was pretty simplistic and could get boring after a while, and some quit pretty early on because many high-level players often killed freshies by spawn. Regardless, the game wasn't super sustainable, especially considering that the developers neglected major updates outside of bug fixes for most of the time in which the game was popular. So as time went on, player counts declined, and then they would soon announce a maintenance period. You know, the thing that Type Soul did where they locked the game for a year and came back with the worst major update ever seen. Yeah, they're doing the exact same thing over here at Runeslayer, which would make sense because Setro, the owner of Type Soul, was actually leading Runeslayer's development at one point, if he still currently isn't. As a whole, however, the game was brought down by its leadership and incoherent development and just lack of funding, I guess, or maybe not even a lack of funding, just a lack of motivation after finally seeing some money come in after the game's release. And real quick, let's talk about sorcery. I'm sure most of you know what sorcery is. The best Jujutsu Kaisen game on Roblox, or at least a lot of people consider it that. This game has fallen off because the owner's just a scammer. He made the game initially, right? And decided to just exit scam with testing money and then leave. Afterwards, he then came back on an alt saying the game was under new management. Yeah, it was him on an alt. So what did he do? The exact same thing twice in a row. He exit scammed again after selling testing. And then get this, he came back a third time. Or, you know, maybe it's a third time. Who knows if it's him on this Discord account that is now under new management managing the game of sorcery. But sorcery is coming back supposedly. Look, the game fell off because it's literally a scam. The game had potential and the devs could have done something good with it if they weren't scamming. But the thing is, they are scamming, so please stop buying it and stop supporting the game. Now next up is Type Soul. Seeing as how we were just recently talking about Setro, I think it's quite thematic. Now currently Type Soul is actually averaging over 25,000 players. However, I still believe the game has come down significantly in quality, and at that, the game has literally died twice. So I'll be talking about every version of Type Soul's fall off in order, starting with the first one. So before Setro, the current owner, owned the game, the first owner of the game and lead developer and scripter was Siren. Now, Siren was originally the lead developer for Type Soul as well, until he got, I guess, voted off his own dev team and just accepted it. But either way, he got replaced and in retaliation, leaked the game. Now, due to the leaks, the game would eventually begin to die, along with the combination of the leaked game and the terribly difficult and strenuous progression which the game had back then. People would gravitate towards the copy games, where they could get Bankai and modes without having to do 175 raids and all that other bullshit like getting skill boxes and Hogyoku fragments. Now for those of you that didn't play the game back then, skill boxes and Hogyoku fragments were super rare. So were resurrections and all the legendary modes and all that, right? Because you would have to do 175 raids, which was brought down from 225 raids, and you'd have to win that many in order to finish the first stage of your Bankai. Now the first stage was the hardest one, so it was really the only one that mattered, but still, it was crazy how annoying it was to get. On top of that, skill boxes were crazy rare, and so were Hogyoku fragments, and having to get more than one of them was crazy. For reference, in the time it took me to do 175 raids, which is how many I did to get my resurrection back then, I got one skill box ever. I got one skill box ever in 175 raids. Now that's pretty unlucky, but you're not getting more than a few if you're doing like 200 raids back then anyway. Along with that, the resurrection chances were like a tenth of what they are today, with the rare ones being like 0.25% at worst. And then the worst part about it was that rerolls were 800 Robux each, so you'd have to pay about $10 worth of Robux for a less than 1% chance to get a legendary. It was bad. Now, the game died pretty soon after reaching all-time lows of 0 players. Like, literally, there were 0 people on Type Soul, and the game was still open. Anyway, after that, Not Dave would be handed over the game as it declined, so that way he could take some of the blame before the game was then given over to Cetro, who would be reviving the game. Now, the first revival of the game was actually pretty good. They made progression easier for people complaining. They also started ungatekeeping and removing a lot of the specs which plagued the game before when Siren was the owner. Because under Siren, a lot of super strong spec stuff was in the game, which would be gatekept and held off by testers for a super long time. Now, along with that, Cetro would also make things less rare and make things less expensive, and then offer a whole lot of free stuff through codes, which is a bad way to handle it, but it was appeasing the community at the time. Now, with Cetro leading development for the game, there were a lot of new player-friendly updates to progression and the removal of all the super gatekept stuff which plagued the game before. Now, this was definitely a better time for the game, and as time would go on, Type Soul would actually improve for a few months with pretty relatively stable player counts. However, there was a big problem: a lack of major content updates. The game lacked major content, with the only new additions being new resurrections, Shikais, Bankais, and stuff like that. Small updates which would be fun to use and experiment with at first, but would ultimately provide no new end goal or progression for the players to work towards, especially with the easier streamlined progression resulting in the game becoming really quick as far as progression goes, so most people just had nothing to do but hop on once every 30 minutes, go gank people with Bankai, and then get off for another half hour. This would be the second time Type Soul would begin to decline in player count, and soon after, Cetro would be replaced by Not Dave as the lead developer due to controversies which would surround Cetro. And they actually still do, except I guess he just doesn't give up ownership anymore. However, he would eventually come back, as we all know, and soon after he would announce the game to be on a hiatus where they would work on the major Hell Arc update of the game before releasing it once again. And then eventually it would come out, which leads us to today. Now, the Hell update was pretty poorly received on release, with the game being full of bugs and optimization issues to the point where even high-end devices would lag just entering Hell. And on top of that, the Hell quests and progression were reminiscent of old Type Soul Bankai progression, where it was just a repetitive, grueling task nobody wanted to do. And along with that, the game itself isn't very optimal for PvE, and doing PvE stuff is just super clunky, and although the game itself is doing pretty well as far as player count goes, I consider it the worst Type Soul has been in a long time, so I actually rarely play it anymore, which is sad because I think Type Soul has some of the most fun PvP on Roblox to be good at. Next up, we have Roblox. This is a game that I have been scrupulously critical about since its release due to the bizarre system, which I believe shouldn't have been allowed on Roblox as a platform. Now, a lot of people hated on me for saying that I didn't really like Roblox because of the bizarre system, the boring progression, just a lot of things about the game that I don't like, and then the community got mad at me for that. And, now the game is kind of dead. Regardless, Roblox is another game given the title and honor of the Deep Woken Killer, and also another game which would end up dead and buried weeks later due to inactive development, which I called, by the way. The devs basically took all the money they could get from it, stopped updating it, and the game went from 30,000 players straight down to where it is right now, which is currently, as I'm writing this video script, 157 players. Not the absolute worst fall off covered in this video. I mean, Type Soul did hit 0, but to go from 25,000 average for an entire month all the way down to sub 200 is a pretty notable fall off, which could have easily been prevented by even some menial content updates. However, the devs gave up and now the game is basically dead. And then finally we have Deep Woken. You all knew it was coming. The most tragic fall off in Roblox history at this point, with the game peaking at over 60,000 players, absolutely unheard of as far as paid Roblox games go, breaking records, winning awards, being the most innovative and inspiring project on Roblox in years. Deep Woken is a big deal for Roblox as a platform, and it really speaks to it, seeing as how this game is 500 Robux, $5. It's not free, but this game still doubled the player counts of games like Roblox and Runeslayer at its prime, which is insane. Now, it's probably the most important game released on Roblox as a platform in years, and when it's used to average like 20,000 players, 24, 25,000, despite the fact it was a paid game, and it would average at least 20,000 players for like a year. It is crazy that today it barely sits at over 2,000 players, with lows going near 1,000 during early morning and weekday hours. This game has been on a steady decline ever since Layer 2 came out, with certain changes and additions being capable of keeping the game at a plateau for weeks at a time, despite community sentiment. People would complain about slop legendary weapons, but those same slop weapons kept the player count up. And as the game has now increasingly experimental changes with stuff like the Shrine of Order nerf, which is long overdue, other stuff like the momentum changes and just whole system overhauls. The game is becoming really buggy, and because of that, the game is just getting worse over time, right? Now, hopefully soon it'll eventually stabilize, but as it is now, the game is in a very bad spot, but hopefully the dev team will be able to save it and get it out of where it is right now, because the game is not healthy. It really isn't. Now, about a game that won't fall off. Mine! I'm joking, all games have to fall off. But with that being said, development is going quite well. I'm having quite a lot of fun with everything, so we'll see how far I decide to take this project. The combat system is completely unique as far as Roblox goes, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm not going to tell you guys too much about it because, you know, I gotta wait till the game is almost done to overhype it and then sell testing for $500 per person, right? I'm joking. Anyway, shoutouts to YouTube members of tier 2 or higher, Green, Goobka, Brick, Highcard, and Drizzy Drake fan. Check out my live channel and my Twitch, right? I just uploaded the Deltarune playthrough. You guys should go watch that. It's actually peak. It's 2 hours of Deltarune. You might think that's long, but the game's like 12 hours long and I spent a lot of time editing it and it's peak. Go fucking watch it. Anyway, I love you all. Have an amazing day and goodbye.